Everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'm going to be starting a new series where once I have traveled to a couple of different countries within a certain area or on a certain continent, and I have a certain feel of the culture, I'm going to share my experience and answer certain vacation questions revolving the time that I had. So, this video is going to be focusing on East and Southeast Asia. Because if you don't know, I used to live in South Korea, which covers East Asia. I lived there for a year. There is more content on my channel regarding that. And then I visited Singapore and Malaysia, which would be considered Southeast Asian countries. So these reflections are going to be on my experience there. If someone is interested in living or traveling to those areas. So I found some questions here that I think really capture a good picture of what people might want to know when you come back from a new place. So when I'm answering these questions, if it generally applies to those three countries, South Korea, um, Singapore, Malaysia, or Asia in general, or the culture, then I'll note that. But if it applies to a certain country, then I will also note that. So, first question, um, what surprised you the most? So the what surprised me the most about Asian culture is how similar or the similarities that I found to Caribbean culture. As a Jamaican American, there were things that I'm like, wow, like this is very much what I've experienced. For example, the whole auntie culture. So whether it be your literal blood aunt or like a woman in your community, a woman in your church, a family friend who, serves as an auntie to you, whether that be in the space of mentorship or unfortunately judgment. um, in Korea, they actually call them ajumas, who are like typically these older ladies who are a bit stern, judgmental, um, but also very loving and caring. And they're really the pillars of the community. Um, And I found that very similar to Caribbean culture, where, you might be referred to like an auntie if you kind of act that same way or have those same characteristics. What did you do for transportation? So, when I lived in South Korea, their public transportation system, even in the countryside, is A1. So, I would use the bus, the train to get everywhere, and taxi as well, or Uber, which is pretty much their taxi system because you can hail it from your phone. In Singapore, I did the same thing. I mainly took the subway though. I was also there visiting my friends, so occasionally I would just ride with them to go places. For example, when we visited Malaysia, we drove with her husband and her mom. And then when we were in Malaysia, we just walked everywhere because the hotel we stayed at was pretty central. What was the best thing you ate on your trip? Honestly, in Singapore, I would say a McSpicy from McDonald's. I don't know what it is, and I've heard this in other countries, that the McDonald's in Korea and Singapore is so good, so fresh. It really makes the one in the US look so disappointing. Um, but they have this item called the McSpicy. It's like a McChicken, but the batter is spicy. And just everything about the sandwich is much better. I was so addicted to that, and then I would have that with their grapefruit Sprite, I think. So delicious. They even had Milo at McDonald's in Korea, and I definitely had that, and it was delicious. Um, if you're Caribbean, if you know what Milo is. It's like um, a chocolate drink that is popular in the Caribbean, but also I think in Latin America as well. What did you pack that came in handy? I would say the universal charger that I got on Amazon. I don't think it was that costly. Um, that had different sockets that fit wherever I was. So Singapore, Korea, it worked wherever I was. Do you have any clothing, accessory, or shoe recommendations that would have come in handy? I would say light, even kind of like this, it's very thin, light clothing for Asian summers. Very hot, humid, sticky. Was it easy to find and buy things that you needed along the way? Yes. In Korea, they had a website. I'm blanking right now, but it was very similar to Amazon, where you can get anything that you needed. Coupon, yes, coupon. It was very similar to Amazon, where I could get anything that I needed. And then Singapore, it's a very accessible country as well. So anything I needed, um, groceries, um, restaurants, souvenirs, um, just daily needs, I was able to go to like the nearest um, commerce center and purchase that. There was even one point where I was having leg pain and there was a masseuse nearby. I didn't end up going, but it was nice to know that that was right nearby. Did you notice any cultural norms that would be helpful for someone to know before visiting? I would say in Asia in general, I'll say that this covers Singapore, Malaysia, and Korea. Um, to kind of move a bit more quietly than you would, let's say, in the US or on the West. So just like your volume, kind of take it down. Um, maybe how expressive you are in public. Um, just your movements should be a bit more subtle, a bit more quiet, because that's kind of how everyone else moves. Um, then in Korea specifically, a cultural norm would be to, I forgot what it's called, but they kind of do a little bit of a bow when when you're see someone, when you're greeting someone, when you enter into an establishment, you go like that to the shop owner, to the bus driver, things like that. What do you wish you knew before you even booked your flight? Um, Probably how intense a 14-hour flight is, um, and that you're going to need lots of things, books, activity books. Like the plane movies can only go so far, but if you're someone who can sleep well on planes, you'll be fine. But for me, I can't, so I was like in and out of sleep. So I just wish I was prepared for that, and also I wish I brought more snacks because I did get a headache because I was hungry. Because I don't think that the plane food was sufficient, so I would have probably brought more snacks or like a meal, packed like a sandwich or something. Was there anything you did or saw that you wish you skipped? The first thing that comes to mind in Singapore is actually their Ferris wheel. It's similar to the London Eye. I'm blanking on what they specifically call it, but it's pretty isolated from all the other attractions. So you kind of go out of your way to get there, and then it's just very like you honestly can get a better view of Singapore on other attractions such as Marina Bay Sands. um, without having to spend all that money on their Ferris wheel. What was the biggest difference in how people live there compared to where you live? I would say the preservation of culture, especially in Korea. Like, culture is all around them. They work so hard to preserve it. I really loved how, like, in downtown Seoul, you would see a skyscraper right next to a hanok, which is like a cultural house. And I just really love how they preserve that, not only aesthetically, but also in their everyday lives and what they teach in school. Did you experience any frustrations on your trip, whether related to the destination itself or the actual traveling? Frustrations. Living in Korea, there were bits of loneliness because at the end of the day, it's a very homogenous society. So if you don't know Korean, like fluently, you're gonna feel left out sometimes. And then living in the countryside, it wasn't as populous as a city center like Seoul or Busan, so there wasn't much to do. Yeah, I wouldn't say there were any frustrations in Singapore and Malaysia. Um, but one thing that I would have done differently um, is maybe not spend as much time in Singapore just because the country is so small that you can essentially get all the main attractions done in like 3, 4 days, and I was there for 10. So, not a frustration, but something I would have maybe planned a bit differently, or um, maybe plan more travel to other Southeast Asian countries to fill the time instead of all the time that I spent there. What should people be aware of to avoid these frustrations? If you're going to teach English in Korea, I would say to learn the language as best as possible. Did you make any mistakes early in the trip that you adjusted for later? Honestly, I would say I made the mistake of being hard on myself or not giving myself enough time to adjust to a new society when I was living in Korea. And then in Singapore and Malaysia, I wouldn't, I don't think that there were any mistakes um, that I made early on in the trip. But that's partially because my friend was hosting me, so I was anything that I wasn't sure of, I just texted her or she was with me. What websites or services did you find the most helpful for planning or booking your trip? So for Korea, getting a recruiter um, was the most helpful instead of applying to work there directly, which is a fine option. Um, I have to find the name of the company, but there's a lot out there that you just need to research. When booking my Singapore and Malaysia trip, again, because I was being hosted, I didn't really have to do much planning, but I did create an itinerary on my own that I just honestly used Google to look up, best things to do or TripAdvisor in Singapore, and then I ran it by my friend, and then she kind of okayed or agreed with whatever's on the list, or told me, okay, like based on the weather, you should go here. You can do 2 or 3 of these things in one day. The weekend would be better for this. So she kind of helped finally configure it, but I really just used Google, maybe Reddit, um, to figure out like an itinerary for my Singapore trip. And then Malaysia was planned by her. What was the most enjoyable or relaxing part of your trip? I would say the most enjoyable part is honestly just immersing yourself in a new culture and just taking a step back and just seeing that there's another way of being, there's another way of living that exists outside of you and what you're used to. And I thought that was just very cool. Um, most relaxing, um, most relaxing. I would say my trip to Busan. with my friend that I took while I was living in Korea. It's just a very chill and relaxing vibe. So we went to the beach, we went to different cultural sites, ate at different places, but just the feel of Busan almost feels maybe maybe like Miami, but like not the hustle and bustle part, just like the weather and like the semi-tropical feel. But I want to say another relaxing part was visiting Malaysia because the hotel, I'm telling you, I will see if I can find it and insert it here. But the hotel, that was the best hotel I have ever stayed at in my life. The one we stayed at in Malacca, Malaysia. From walking in the door and the attendant brings you a warm towel and tea, and then the room was just so clean. The toiletries, they actually left like I think it was like cookies or a treat welcoming us um, in the room with like a personalized note. The breakfast was delicious. The service was A1. The ambiance was stunning. Did you go anywhere super beautiful where you felt like your photos just couldn't do it justice? To be honest, a lot of parts of Korea are just very beautiful because, again, they preserve their culture and they upkeep their landscaping. And Korea has a lot, kind of like the United States, there's a lot of different types of landscapes there. Like, you might see this on like Jeju Island. You might see the beautiful skyscrapers in Seoul, the beautiful hills, especially at my school in the countryside um, of rural Korea. So there's just a lot of beauty all around. Was there anything you splurged on that was totally worth it? Maybe just going to Singapore in general, because that ticket is very expensive. It was almost, I think, 2,000 US dollars to go from New York to actually Korea and then lay over and go from Korea to Singapore and then do the same thing back. I think round trip was almost 2,000 USD. So maybe the trip in general I splurged on, but totally, totally worth it. Would you go back? And if so, what would you want to do next time? I would definitely go back to Singapore. I think it's just a very cool country. Um, I'm not sure if I would go back to Korea because I lived there, so I feel like I explored a lot. Um, I think I would want to visit maybe other countries in Asia, so maybe China, um, Thailand, um, Indonesia, Vietnam. Well, that's all the questions. I hope that this video um, was enjoyable. You learned something from it. Let me know if the series is something that you'd like to see. I could do one for the Caribbean um, because I've been to quite a few Caribbean islands. So I could do one for that. And then after I visit like a good amount of countries in another cluster of the world or on another continent, then I will continue um, keep this going. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. I really appreciate all of you because I haven't been posting a lot lately, and I appreciate the fact that you guys have not left. So I appreciate this community and this family. So thank you. Take care. Take care of your health, your mental health, and just keep pushing, keep the faith. You got this.